What happens when a beloved actor sits down for what should be a friendly chat about his hit series, only to be met with accusations, personal attacks, and shocking disrespect from the very person meant to welcome him? In just 25 seconds of uncomfortable silence, everything unraveled. A morning show meant to celebrate turned into a battleground, and one guest refused to back down. Nicholas Ralph walked onto the set that morning, expecting the usual warmth. The cameras were rolling, and the audience was settled in their seats, and Lorraine Kelly sat behind her desk with that familiar smile plastered across her face. But something felt different from the moment he sat down. "Nicholas, welcome to the show," Lorraine began, her tone already carrying an edge that hadn't been there for previous guests. "I suppose we should talk about your little show, shouldn't we?" Nicholas shifted in his seat, maintaining his composure. "Thank you for having me. Yes, we're incredibly proud of what we've accomplished this season." "Proud," Lorraine repeated, leaning back in her chair. "That's an interesting word choice. Tell me, do you think viewers are getting tired of the same formulaic storylines week after week?" The audience grew quiet. This wasn't the softball question anyone expected. Nicholas smiled politely, refusing to take the bait. "I think our audience connects with the characters because they're real. Flawed people dealing with genuine struggles. The response has been overwhelmingly positive." Sitting to Lorraine's left was producer Janet Mills, who shot a nervous glance toward the camera operators. On the other side sat entertainment correspondent David Chen, who looked down at his notes, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. "Overwhelmingly positive," Lorraine said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Is that what your people tell you? Because the reviews I've been reading tell quite a different story." "I respect that everyone has their opinion," Nicholas replied calmly. "But the viewing figures speak for themselves. People are watching, and more importantly, they're emotionally invested in these characters." Lorraine waved her hand dismissively. "Viewing figures. That's all anyone cares about these days, isn't it? Not quality, not substance. Just how many eyes you can get on a screen." Nicholas took a breath before responding. "I think that's a bit reductive. Yes, viewing figures matter because they allow us to continue telling stories. But that's not why we do this. We do it because these characters matter to people. They see themselves in these stories." "Do they really?" Lorraine pressed, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Or do they just have nothing better to watch?" The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the cheerful morning programming they'd signed up for. A woman in the third row whispered to her companion, her disapproval clear even from across the studio. Janet leaned forward slightly, attempting to redirect. "I think what makes the show special is the way it captures the nuances of rural communities. The attention to detail in the—" "Janet, I'm speaking." Lorraine cut her off without even looking in her direction. The dismissal was so casual, so practiced, that it was clear this wasn't the first time. Janet immediately fell silent, her face flushing with embarrassment and frustration. Nicholas noticed the exchange, and his jaw tightened slightly. "With respect, I think the show has plenty of substance. Our writers work incredibly hard to craft stories that resonate with audiences. They research extensively. They consult with people from these communities. Your writers," Lorraine interrupted, her voice rising with each word. "Let's talk about your writers for a moment, shall we? How many of them actually have real experience with rural life? Or are they all London-based, sitting in coffee shops, making up stories about a world they've never actually lived in? Stories about farmers they've never met, about struggles they've never faced?" Nicholas felt his patience wearing thin, but he maintained his composure. "Many of our writing team grew up in rural communities. They bring their own authentic experiences to the stories we tell. One of our lead writers grew up on a farm in Scotland. Another spent 20 years as a veterinarian before pursuing television writing. These aren't outsiders imagining what rural life might be like. These are people who've lived it. Authentic, Lorraine scoffed, practically spitting the word. There's that word again. You actors love your buzzwords, don't you? Everything is authentic. Everything is genuine. Everything is so very real and meaningful. David Chen finally spoke up, trying to ease the mounting tension in the room. He cleared his throat nervously before beginning. I actually think the show does capture something genuine about community life. The way the characters support each other through difficult times, the way they navigate change while holding on to tradition. These are universal themes that... David, no one asked you, Lorraine snapped, her head whipping toward him with such ferocity that he visibly flinched. We have a guest here, and when I want your input, I'll specifically request it. Until then, I'd appreciate it if you'd remember your place. David's mouth closed immediately, and he exchanged a shocked look with Janet across the desk. In all his years working on the show, he'd never been spoken to so harshly on air. Off camera, sure, Lorraine had her moments, but never like this. Never in front of millions of viewers. Nicholas leaned forward, his hands clasped together, choosing his words carefully. I'm not sure what the purpose of this interview is meant to be anymore. I came here this morning in good faith, ready to talk about the show, to share some behind-the-scenes stories, to connect with viewers who have been so supportive of what we're doing. But this doesn't feel like an interview. This feels like an interrogation. The purpose, Lorraine said slowly, deliberately, her eyes boring into him, is to have an honest conversation for once. Something you actors seem absolutely allergic to. Everything is always wonderful. Everyone is always amazing. Every single project is somehow the best thing you've ever done. It's exhausting, Nicholas. It's insulting to the intelligence of everyone watching. People don't want more manufactured positivity. They want truth. I think there's a fundamental difference between being positive about your work and being dishonest, Nicholas said, his voice steady but firm, refusing to be cowed. I genuinely love the work we do. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. I believe in the stories we're telling and the team we've built. If that comes across as disingenuous to you, I'm truly sorry you feel that way, but I won't apologize for being passionate about something I care deeply about. Oh, don't apologize to me, Lorraine shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Please, and save all your apologies for the viewers who sit through hour after hour of recycled plots and predictable character arcs. Save them for the people who tune in week after week expecting something new and getting the same tired storylines dressed up in slightly different clothing. That's who deserves your apology. The audience began murmuring among themselves, the discomfort in the room growing palpable. People were exchanging glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. This had gone far beyond typical interview banter or even tough questioning. This was something else entirely. Something ugly. Janet tried once more to intervene, her voice slightly shaky, but determined. Perhaps we could shift gears for a moment and talk about the upcoming storyline with the Harvest Festival. I know viewers have been really excited about... Janet, I swear to you, if you interrupt me one more time, we're going to have a very different conversation, Lorraine warned, her finger pointing accusingly across the desk. The threat hung in the air, vague, but menacing. Janet's eyes widened in shock, and she pressed her lips together tightly, her hands gripping her notes until her knuckles turned white. Nicholas had seen enough. The attack on him was one thing, but watching Lorraine bully her own staff was something he couldn't stomach. I don't think you should speak to your colleagues that way. They're professionals trying to contribute to the conversation. And you're treating them like subordinates who should be seen and not heard. Lorraine's head snapped toward him with such speed that several audience members actually leaned back in their seats. I'm sorry. What did you just say to me? I said you shouldn't speak to your colleagues that way, Nicholas repeated, his voice calm but absolutely unyielding. They're trying to do their jobs, and you're shutting them down. They're trying to make this interview better, more interesting. all more engaging, and you're dismissing them like they're children who've spoken out of turn. How I run my show is absolutely none of your concern, Lorraine said, her face reddening with anger. You're a guest here, Nicholas. A guest who's been graciously given a platform to promote his little program, and instead of showing an ounce of gratitude, instead of being professional, you're sitting in my chair, on my set, critiquing how I conduct my business. The audacity is truly breathtaking. I'm grateful for opportunities, Nicholas replied, but I'm not going to sit here while you demean people and attack the work that hundreds of talented individuals pour their hearts into. Attack? Lorraine laughed bitterly. You think asking basic questions is an attack? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your generation can't handle the slightest bit of criticism without playing the victim. There's a difference between criticism and hostility, Nicholas said. You've been hostile since the moment I sat down. David Chen nodded almost imperceptibly, clearly agreeing, but too intimidated to speak. Hostile, Lorraine repeated mockingly. I'm being hostile because I won't fawn all over you and tell you how brilliant you are. Maybe you need to grow thicker skin if you want to survive in this industry. I've been in this industry long enough to know the difference between tough questions and personal attacks, Nicholas countered. You're not interested in hearing about the show. You made up your mind before I walked through that door. Maybe I did, Lorraine admitted, leaning forward aggressively. Maybe I'm tired of watching actors waltz onto talk shows, spout their rehearsed talking points, and contribute nothing of value to the conversation. Then why invite me at all? Nicholas asked, spreading his hands. Why waste everyone's time? Because believe it or not, people still want to hear from you, Lorraine said, even if what you have to say is mind-numbingly boring. Janet gasped audibly. Even by Lorraine's standards, this was beyond acceptable. Nicholas stood up slowly, never breaking eye contact with Lorraine. I think we're done here. Sit down, Lorraine commanded. We still have 8 minutes left in this segment. No, Nicholas said simply. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. Not by you. Not by anyone. You walk off this set and you'll never work a morning show again, Lorraine threatened, her voice icy. I have connections. I can make things very difficult for you. Then I guess I'll have to live with that, Nicholas replied, already removing his microphone. Because some things are more important than publicity. David Chen watched with barely concealed admiration. Janet looked like she wanted to applaud, but didn't dare. You're making a huge mistake, Lorraine hissed. Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea how long I've been doing this? I know exactly who you are, Nicholas said quietly. That's why I'm leaving. He handed his microphone to a stunned stagehand and turned toward the exit. Security, Lorraine shouted, her composure completely shattered. Get him out of here! Get him off my set! I'm already leaving, Nicholas called back without turning around. You don't need to throw me out. Yes, I do, Lorraine yelled, standing up from behind her desk. You don't get to walk away on your terms. This is my show. 2 security guards appeared, looking confused about what exactly they were supposed to do. Nicholas was calmly walking toward the exit, not causing any disruption. Escort him out, Lorraine demanded, her voice shrill. Make sure everyone sees him being removed. The security guards reluctantly moved toward Nicholas, but he stopped and turned back one final time. You know what the saddest part of all this is? Nicholas asked, his voice carrying across the silent studio. You could have had a genuine conversation. You could have asked real questions about the work, about the challenges, about what drives us as artists. Instead, you chose to be cruel. And for what? Better ratings? A viral moment? Was it worth it? Lorraine's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I feel sorry for you, Nicholas continued. I really do. Because somewhere along the way, you forgot why you got into this business. It wasn't to tear people down. It was to connect with them, to share stories, to find common ground. Get out, Lorraine whispered. but the fire had gone from her voice. "Gladly," Nicholas said. As he walked past the audience, several people began to clap. It started with just one or two, but within seconds, half the audience was applauding his exit. "Stop that!" Lorraine shouted at the audience. "This isn't a theater. Stop clapping!" But the applause only grew louder. Janet finally allowed herself a small smile. David Chen was openly grinning. Nicholas reached the studio door and paused, looking back at Lorraine one last time. She stood there, microphone in hand, her carefully constructed authority crumbling around her. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for," Nicholas said softly. "I really do." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a quiet click that somehow echoed through the entire studio. Lorraine stood frozen for a moment, the reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. The cameras were still rolling. The audience was still applauding. Her producers were frantically speaking into their headsets. "Well," she finally said, forcing a laugh that came out strangled. "I suppose that's what happens when actors get too big for their boots." But nobody was buying it. The audience had stopped clapping, but they weren't looking at her with sympathy or understanding. They were looking at her with something much worse: disappointment. Janet seized the moment, speaking quickly before Lorraine could silence her again. "Thought perhaps we should take a break and regroup." "We don't need to regroup," Lorraine snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. "We have other guests. Bring out the next guest." "There is no next guest scheduled for another 20 minutes, David Chen said quietly. "Nicholas was supposed to fill this entire segment." Lorraine's face went pale. Then we'll go to commercial." "We just came back from commercial 3 minutes ago," Janet pointed out. The silence that followed was deafening. Lorraine looked around desperately, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. "I was just trying to have an honest conversation," she said, but she was talking to herself more than anyone else. Someone needs to ask these people real questions. Someone needs to push back against all the Hollywood nonsense. "There's a difference between asking tough questions and being cruel," David said, finding his courage now that Nicholas was gone. "And what just happened crossed that line." "Don't you dare lecture me," Lorraine turned on him. "I've been doing this since before you were born." "Maybe that's part of the problem," David replied evenly. "Maybe the world has changed, and you haven't changed with it." Lorraine's eyes flashed dangerously. "You're fired. Both of you. Janet, David, you're fired. Get off my set." Janet laughed, actually laughed, and it wasn't a nervous laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had finally been freed. "You can't fire us. We don't work directly for you. We work for the network." "Then I'll have the network fire you," Lorraine threatened. "Good luck with that," Janet said, standing up and gathering her notes. "After what just happened, after how you treated a guest and your own team on live television, I don't think the network is going to be taking your calls for a while." David stood as well, in solidarity written across his face. "She's right. You've been getting away with this behavior for years because people were too afraid to stand up to you. But Nicholas just showed everyone what courage looks like. And honestly, it's inspiring." "Get out," Lorraine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Both of you, just get out." They left without another word, walking past the stunned audience and crew. As they exited, a few audience members began applauding again, this time for them. Lorraine stood alone on her set, the empire she'd built suddenly feeling like a prison. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her humiliation. A producer's voice crackled through the studio speakers. "Lorraine, we need to cut to an emergency commercial break. Now." "No," Lorraine said, straightening her shoulders. "We finished the show. We have an hour left, and we're going to fill it." "With what?" the producer asked, desperation clear in his voice. "All your guests have either left or refused to come on after what they just saw." "Then I'll fill it myself," Lorraine declared. "I'll take questions from the audience. We'll make it work." But when she turned to the audience, hoping to salvage something from the disaster, she was met with row after row of empty seats. People were walking out. Not running, not causing a scene, just quietly gathering their belongings and leaving. "Where are you going?" Lorraine called out, her voice cracking. "We're not finished!" An older woman near the back paused and turned. "Yes, we are," she said simply. "This isn't entertainment anymore. It's just sad." Lorraine watched helplessly as more than half her audience filed out, leaving gaping holes in the carefully arranged seating. The remaining audience members looked uncomfortable, like they wanted to leave but didn't know if they were allowed. "Fine," Lorraine shouted. "Go! All of you. Just go. You came here for free tickets and coffee, and now you think you're too good to stay?" The remaining audience members needed no further encouragement. They left quickly, not looking back. Within minutes, Lorraine stood in an almost empty studio. A few crew members remained at their posts because they had to, but their body language spoke volumes. They wouldn't meet her eyes. They focused intently on their equipment, on their clipboards, on anything but her. "This is ridiculous," Lorraine said to no one in particular. "He was in the wrong. He was disrespectful. He walked off my show." One of the camera operators, a young woman who had worked on the show for 2 years, finally spoke up. "With respect, Miss Kelly, I don't think that's how anyone else saw it." "What did you say?" Lorraine turned on her. "I said that's not how it looked from where we were standing," the camera operator repeated, her voice steady. "Nicholas Ralph was polite and professional. You were the one who kept attacking him." "I was doing my job," Lorraine insisted. "Your job is to interview guests, not bully them," another crew member chimed in, an older sound technician. "I've worked in television for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what just happened." "Then maybe you need to work somewhere else," Lorraine shot back. "Maybe I do," the sound technician agreed, beginning to pack up his equipment. "Maybe we all do." One by one, crew members began shutting down their stations. Not in protest, not in solidarity, but simply because there was no show left to produce. The guests were gone. The audience was gone. The co-hosts were gone. "You can't all just leave," Lorraine shouted, panic seeping into her voice. "We have a contract. We have an obligation." "Our obligation was to produce a show," the camera operator said. "There's no show to produce anymore." Lorraine sank into her chair behind the desk, the weight of what had happened finally crushing down on her. The set that had been her kingdom, her domain, now felt like a tomb. A young production assistant, barely out of university, approached hesitantly. "Miss Kelly, the network executives are on their way down. They want to speak with you." "Tell them I'm busy," Lorraine said weakly. "I don't think that's a good idea," the assistant said gently. "They were pretty clear that you need to be here when they arrive." Lorraine looked up at the young woman, really looked at her for perhaps the first time despite working with her for months. "Do you think I was wrong?" The assistant hesitated, clearly torn between honesty and self-preservation. Finally, she spoke. "I think you forgot that guests are people too. They have feelings. They deserve respect, even when you disagree with them." "I respect people who earn it," Lorraine muttered. "Nicholas Ralph didn't do anything to lose your respect," the assistant replied. "He came here to talk about his work. That's all, and you treated him like an enemy from the first question." "He's been on dozens of talk shows," Lorraine defended herself, "saying the same things, giving the same answers. I wanted something different. Something real." "There are ways to get real answers without being cruel," the assistant said. "You could have asked thoughtful questions. You could have challenged him respectfully. Instead, you attacked him. And when your own team tried to help, you attacked them too." Lorraine had no response. She stared at the empty audience seats, at the abandoned co-host chairs, at the dark cameras that were finally being powered down. "How did it come to this?" she whispered. "Oh, I think you've been heading here for a while," the assistant said honestly. "Today was just the day someone finally pushed back." The studio doors opened, and 3 network executives walked in, their faces grave. Behind them came 2 members of the legal team, tablets in hand. "Lorraine," the lead executive said, his tone professional but cold. "We need to talk." "I know how this looks," Lorraine began, standing to face them. "But if you watch the tape back, you'll see." "We've been watching," the executive interrupted. "The whole time, in real time, along with several 100,000 viewers who got quite the show this morning." "He was difficult," Lorraine tried. "He wouldn't engage properly. He was professional and polite while you publicly berated him," the executive said flatly. "Then you fired 2 of your panelists on live television, which, by the way, you don't have the authority to do. Then you yelled at your audience until they walked out. And now your crew is abandoning ship because they don't want to be associated with what just happened." "This is still my show," Lorraine said, but the words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. "Actually," one of the lawyers spoke up, consulting her tablet, "according to your contract, the network retains the right to remove hosts who damage the show's reputation or engage in conduct detrimental to the program." "You're firing me?" Lorraine asked, disbelief written across her face. "Over one bad interview?" "This wasn't just one bad interview," the executive said. "This was a pattern of behavior finally caught on camera for everyone to see. We've had complaints before. Guests who didn't want to come back. Staff members who requested transfers. But today, you did it all in front of a live audience and broadcast it to the world." "I made this show what it is," Lorraine said desperately. "For years, I've brought in viewers. I've made this network money. You can't just throw that away." "You threw it away," the executive replied, "the moment you decided that being provocative was more important than being a good host. The moment you forgot that your job is to make guests feel welcome. See, not to make them wish they'd never come." Lorraine looked around at the empty studio one more time, seeing it with new eyes. This place that had been the center of her world suddenly felt foreign, hostile. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we go into crisis management mode," the executive said. "We issue a statement. We apologize to Nicholas Ralph and invite him back if he's willing. We reassure Janet Mills and David Chen that they still have jobs here. And we figure out what to do with this time slot." "And me?" Lorraine asked. The executive's expression softened slightly. "Just a fraction." "That's going to depend on a lot of things. But for now, you need to go home. Don't speak to the press. Don't post on social media. Don't do anything except think very carefully about what happened here today and why." Lorraine nodded numbly. There was nothing left to say. No argument left to make. She gathered her belongings slowly, each movement feeling like it took tremendous effort. As she walked toward the exit, the same path Nicholas Ralph had taken less than an hour before, she understood something she hadn't before. He hadn't run away. He hadn't lost his temper or caused a scene. He had simply refused to accept treatment that was beneath his dignity. And in doing so, he had revealed exactly who she had become. The studio door closed behind her with that same quiet click, but this time there was no applause. There was only silence.